Hello, welcome back. Please note, this is not a general information video about the Great Leap Forward. A lot of people have talked a lot about the Great Leap Forward already. What I'm doing here is using it to illustrate a certain kind of communism in practice, and that is radical communism. That's a term that was coined by the historian David Priestland. The Chinese Communist Party, after a very long civil war, comes into power in 1949 and starts governing the country. They have to immediately start trying to develop the country, start trying to industrialize the country, because the country that they've just taken over governing is quite underdeveloped. It's a largely agrarian country and it's got a lot of economic problems. And of course, it's been ravaged by this war that has gone on for several decades. By the late 1950s, the country's leader, Mao Zedong, had decided that industrialization wasn't going as fast as he wanted it to. He was getting quite frustrated with it. So he rallied the people behind a mass campaign. He called on them to go all out, aim high, and build socialism. People all across the country, particularly in the countryside, were mobilized and rallied to build very large-scale, labor-intensive infrastructure projects, including things like irrigation systems, dams, bridges, and roads. So this Great Leap was based on stirring up the people with mass political fervor to put that popular energy into the service of revolutionary goals. That's really what characterizes radical communism. Mao himself had very high hopes for the Great Leap Forward. To try to accelerate steel production as fast as possible, ordinary people were encouraged to set up what were known as backyard steel furnaces. Ordinary, everyday implements like pots and pans were thrown into these steel furnaces to melt them down to produce iron ore, but unsurprisingly, this iron ore was of absolutely terrible quality and most of it was wasted and hardly any of it could be used for anything. When the Chinese Communist Party had come to power, they had turned to their stronger ally, the Soviet Union, for help and advice about how to build up their country. So at this time, they were being advised by a lot of Soviet economists how to organize their economy. And those Soviet economists were telling them to organize the economy based on careful top-down planning. This was very much the kind of economic organization that was favored by Khrushchev, who was the Soviet leader at the time. But Mao is getting really frustrated with this slow economic planning, and so this is a point where he really broke away from Khrushchev, and the relationship between China and the Soviet Union really started to break down. In this rush to mobilize people, huge amounts of rural labor, so workers on the farms in the countryside, were redirected out of agriculture and working on the farms and into these huge industrial projects. This, combined with very bad weather in many regions, contributed to complete failures of harvests in many localities. Local officials, who were very often afraid to disobey the political policies of the time, were afraid of upsetting their superiors and perhaps being blamed for the disasters that were unfolding. Very often reported highly exaggerated production figures or simply didn't reveal what was really going on. And the result of all this was a huge catastrophe across the Chinese countryside and millions of people starved. The number of deaths caused by starvation in the Great Leap Forward has been hugely debated, and the figures are very much disputed, and these are highly politicized debates. Some people put the number as high as 30 to 45 million, and others put the number at more like 15 to 20 million. So there is a lot of disagreement, but everybody agrees that this was a complete catastrophe. So this is one example of radical communism going very, very wrong. In the next video, I'll talk about how this kind of radical communism, this bottom-up style of mobilization that was very much favored by Mao, really fell into disrepute after the Great Leap Forward. And a different kind of communism came to the fore in Chinese political circles, and that was modernist communism. Thank you for watching.